Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was actually really enjoying this. Lots of fun, and I want to thank my colleague who split his time with me, my friend from Red Deer, for his excellent speech, and of course, happy to rise again and talk about this bill. I spoke about this at second reading, and happy to offer my thoughts again at third reading, although under some suspicion about what actually happened. I've been in this place a long time, Madam Speaker, and the fact that we're not debating the bill that the committee actually adopted at third reading is interesting to say the least. But, Madam Speaker, I rise today to deal with Bill C-3, which claims to redress the Lost Canadians issue, but of course goes far beyond that goal and scope in its intent. Lost Canadians are, of course, those with strong ties to Canada that have been denied the privilege of being conferred our citizenship due to complexities or outdated provisions in our laws. Conservatives, of course, believe that those who have been arbitrarily or unfairly denied this privilege should, of course, have this error corrected, yet the bill that is now currently before Parliament still remains a bad one, notwithstanding that issue. Instead of merely remediating the most egregious cases of lost citizenship, it took the Liberals took the liberty of creating a system that would completely gut and undervalue the value of Canadian citizenship. While most immigrants to Canada must work hard to acquire their citizenship, something that they are immensely proud of, this bill creates a system where citizenship is not awarded in a merit-based manner. It introduces an extremely weak substantial connection test to gain citizenship. An individual's parents need only to spend 1,095 non-consecutive days in Canada at any point to gain citizenship. No criminal background check would be required. This was something that Conservatives proposed as an amendment at committee and had passed, but is now removed from the bill suspiciously at third reading. And this is the point, Madam Speaker, that I'd like to expand on, and it should not be ignored. In the last few days, I received a response to an order paper question where I asked how many non-Canadians are incarcerated in federal prisons in Canada. And that doesn't even include the ones that are incarcerated at provincial institutions, which are 2 years less a day for those sentences. And it showed that we have nearly 1,000 non-Canadians in federal institutions in Canada. If they serve a federal sentence, and the average sentence for a federal penitentiary is 1,787 days. That's the average sentence. Those people, those 1,000 people, when they get out, will have now met the test, this arbitrary 1,095 non-consecutive days test, where they can go anywhere they want in the world after they're released from a federal prison in Canada. And because they've spent that time in Canada, any children that they might have could now be conferred Canadian citizenship. Should their children, and should the children of these people who have spent this time in a prison, who might be well, it's very simple for the member for Winnipeg North. If they are the children of Canadian citizens, but not citizens themselves, and are in a federal prison, they can confer this citizenship on to the second generation. And that's exactly the point that this legislation has. Essentially, C-3 allows foreign-born individuals who've never lived in Canada to bypass the immigration system and gain citizenship just because a parent spent a few months in Canada years or even decades ago. It would create a plethora of citizens born outside the country with no meaningful connection to Canada whatsoever. That's what grandchildren are. That's why our party worked collaboratively at committee to improve the bill. Our amendments would have ensured that it would solve the Lost Canadians issue but limit potential abuses. These were common sense proposals, such as requiring knowledge of Canada's official languages and undergoing a security assessment. But this government has teamed up with the NDP to gut these changes. This, despite the NDP not even having a seat at the committee table. Not only is this underhanded, but it violates the spirit of the democratic process that we have in this place. They even removed our changes that would allow Canadians working overseas in the service of our government to pass on their citizenship. This goes to show that we may have a new Prime Minister, but this is the same old Liberal government. It should be noted that Bill C-3 and its successor is the successor to Bill C-71 in the previous Parliament. And this government basically tried to repass the same failed policies as the last government. This whole debacle arose because the last Prime Minister refused to challenge a 2009 court decision in Ontario that struck down the previous Harper area provisions that protected our citizenship system from abuses. Conservatives have always understood that citizenship has an inherent value. After all, a Canadian passport is one of the most valued in the world, offering visa-free travel to 184 countries. For years, Canadian citizenship was the envy of the world, attracting the best newcomers wishing to better their lives. But years of mismanagement under this government has harmed our reputation to our citizenship. But where does this value lie? Aristotle defined this concept of citizenship roughly as the right to rule and be ruled in turn, being closely associated with the ideas of civic participation in the polis. His ideas of citizenship were still primitive compared to today. Rome would expand on these ideas by defining the rights of citizens as being tied to certain responsibilities, namely the protection of the state through military service. Later, Rousseau and Locke expanded on these ideas to include a more robust system of rights and responsibilities. This is often referred to as the social contract that defines the obligations that both citizen and state have with each other. While the franchise of citizens has expanded since then, no one disputes these ancient ideas that rights cannot exist without responsibilities. So how does this tie in to the current debate that we have on C3 on citizenship? Citizenship is the culmination of these ideas. It is the pinnacle proof of belonging to a certain group of people. These being people that share the same rights and obligations. These being people with similar underlying values. In Canada, this includes things like a rule of law, respect for democracy, and a tolerance for those with differing views or opinions. These being people who share similar historical, linguistic, and cultural links with each other. In our system, those who wish to attain this level of belonging are diligent and work hard to attain it. This is not given to them, they have earned it. They are the best fits for our system, including participation in our economic and social fabric. That is why it's disheartening to see that this current government says that our citizenship basically has no value. If we don't treat our citizenship carefully, why would any other country do this? Will other countries retaliate and reduce our visa-free access? Citizenship is not a commodity. It should not be bought, and it certainly should not be given away cheaply by way of Bill C-3. To hold Canadian citizenship is to belong to one of the greatest nations on the planet, and that should not be forgotten. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Questions and comments. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader.
Yes, Madam Speaker, there is a lack of understanding of the legislation. The member indicated he made this inquiry and he finds out that there's 1,000 people that are not Canadians in our jails. And he says, now, under this legislation, somehow their grandchildren are going to be able to, or they will be disabled, not able to come unless this legislation passes. If you are a permanent resident and you go to jail for 2 or more years, you cannot become a Canadian citizen. In order for the whole process to kick in, you have to be rooted to a Canadian citizen. Would the member at the very least acknowledge that the information that he has provided is actually wrong? And at the end of the day, you got to be careful, because the way in which you express it, many would say it comes across as being anti-immigrant.
The Honourable Member for Elgin St. Thomas, London South.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The member for Winnipeg North is an experienced member. He knows better than to speak directly to my honourable colleague rather than through you, Madam Chair, because he was accusing you of doing something which I'm sure you will be the first to admit you were not actually doing.
The Honourable Member was somewhat speaking to me, but I take the Honourable Member's point. The Honourable Member for Ponoka Disbury.
think my friend, I use that term sparingly, from Winnipeg North missed the point. If someone has their child here who is not a citizen, that person commits a crime and goes to jail, goes to a federal prison, for which I've just explained that the average sentence length is 1,787 days, then leaves prison, goes back to another country from which they were originally from, or their parents might have been originally from, because millions upon millions of Canadians have moved here from elsewhere, my wife included, not anti-immigrant at all. Thanks for the accusation, though. But notwithstanding that, Madam Speaker, these people, if their parents are Canadian citizens or have those rights, then that means the grandchildren of those parents, through this person who's been incarcerated in Canada, meets that threshold and will now be entitled to Canadian citizenship. I think that's ridiculous.
Questions et commentaires, questions and comments. The honourable member for Peace River West Loch.
Well, I want to thank my honourable colleague for his great speech on this topic. I was just wondering if he's got any other examples. The last one was great. I was just wondering if he's got any other examples of how this piece of legislation, or how the Liberals have cheapened Canadian citizenship over the last 10 years.
The honourable member for Ponoka Disbury.
So I want to thank my friend from Alberta for bringing this up. Look, I've been here a long time, Madam Speaker. I was here in 2006 when the Lebanon crisis broke out. We found that there was not only a few hundred, not only a few thousand, but some 60,000 Canadians living abroad in just that particular case, which I think inspired some of the conversations about whether or not we have citizens of convenience that are here. I mentioned in my speech that our passport has visa-free access in over 184 countries around the world. There are a lot of people who want to have access to Canadian privileges, who want to have access to the Canadian passport, who want to have access to Canadian programs and services, but might not be contributing much when it comes to the prosperity of our nation, for example. And I think a 1,095-day tour of Canada is not substantial enough in any way, shape, or form. And it makes me wonder, Madam Speaker, if perhaps this is being done to advance the interests of not only of maybe just one particular party in this House, instead of advancing the interests of our country writ large.
Questions et commentaires. Questions and comments. The honourable the honourable member for Waterloo.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, this is a debate that constituents within the riding of Waterloo have been actively participating in. And there's definitely a range of views and perspectives. I hear the members' comments in regards to having a commitment to advancing the prosperity of the country, being a great Canadian. In the riding of Waterloo, I have a couple circumstances or situations. One includes a Canadian whose parents were working abroad. This individual has lived her entire life in Canada, speaks both official languages, is a contributing, hardworking, tax-paying citizen, went abroad, so was born abroad. She went abroad to a conference and was not able to come home because it was suggested, because she was pregnant, that she not travel. So she ended up having her baby abroad, and that child is not entitled to Canadian citizenship. So in circumstances such as this, where the family is very committed to Canada, speak both official languages, does a member agree that that child should have Canadian citizenship?
Honourable member for Ponoka Disbury.
I'm not familiar with the case that my friend from Waterloo has brought up, but I'll simply suggest this. I've been an MP for 20 years. I've had numerous cases of people who have been in this country paying taxes for years and years and years, and their children being born actually even in this country, and they speak the language, being sent back to the country of origin of their parents. But that is a first-generation decision, and Conservatives always stood up for that first-generation commitment. It's the third-generation one, or that is the most problematic. Second generation, you're right, sorry. Yeah.